Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for another week, episode 2 of our deep dive into the 1981 Disney foray into the hero genre with Condorman, something that's
Condorman. I love being echo.
It's something that's dear to some of the members of the panel, which you'll probably realise as we move forward. Joining me as always, Rik Legarto, Tom Magill, Dan Miller. My name's Dave Scotland, and this is episode 2, as I've mentioned. And in this episode, we're going to spend a bit of time on the Lost Sofa with Rik Legarto, who's going to take us into a different perspective of the narrative for this film, where we look at it more from a writer's perspective. Rik is an accomplished writer and definitely sees the world through that lens. And Tom's going to expose us later on in the show to Just the Tip, where we look at some trivia and some behind the scenes information that not a lot of people are privy to. It's the sort of stuff that gets us nerds excited. So without wasting any more time, let's get into a little bit of time on the Lost Sofa.
There is something going down, and I can feel it.
At last, welcome to you. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
I can feel it. There is something going down, and I can feel it.
Hola, everyone from your bunkers during this fine pandemic apocalypse. Welcome to the COVID-19. Was it COVID-19?
19.
Yeah, oops.
We're up to 19.
19.
Yeah.
10 more. 10
That's
more
right.
than COVID-9.
We've been through so many COVIDs.
Coming to you from our individual bunkers, because with us, there's no distance enough for social distancing. Anyway, yes, The Lost Sofa. This is where I talk about the writers and the writing and sort of a peek into the writing room. And today we're looking at Condorman from the olden days, 1981. It's an interesting one as far as writers are concerned. It is actually, as the credits have an unusual reference to the original material. And they say inspired by, not based on, not an adaptation of, but inspired by. And it's inspired by a novel or a short story called, I'm not sure if it's a short story or a novel, called The Game of X by Robert Sheckley.
I like that title.
Who was actually quite a accomplished writer, but we'll get back to him in a minute.
Okay.
But it's interesting that it says inspired by. I don't know if that's a legal thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it normally indicate that they sort of borrowed some concepts but didn't really pay for them? Or weren't willing to pay for them?
I imagine they couldn't have got away with that. Not with the Writers Guild in America. Robert Sheckley, as I'll talk about later, is too big a writer, too established a writer I imagine, to have let that go. I think I don't know who it's there to protect, but apparently the film is loosely based on his story. Okay. And I don't know if that's them covering their ass or it's Robert Sheckley going, look, my book's much better than that.
Well, now I'm keen to find out what his book's all about. I'd love to see how loose.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but there you go. So I think that's an interesting beginning. The actual screenplay was by a gentleman by the name of Mark Sturvint, who I'd never heard of before. And he doesn't have many writing credits. In fact, there's not a lot about him that I could find. His other writing credit is for a 1970s gritty cop detective show, which I used to actually love. Me and my dad used to watch, called Beretta.
Beretta, yes.
Yes. Had the actor Robert someone or other.
Mitchum?
Yeah, no, it wasn't Mitchum. It was
Blake.
Might have been. Yeah, had a really.
I remember
gritty
that.
feel.
I can almost recall the theme music.
Yeah. It was one of those iconic 70s sort of gritty.
Yeah, like Streets of San Francisco.
Yeah,
Police Story, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote, by looks of it, TV series, teleplay, one episode, and that was called The Sister Ain't No Cousin. So anyway, and that was 4 years before Condorman came out. Most of his credits for actually, he's got a few producing credits, but most of his credits are actually for second unit director or assistant director or sort of second director somewhere there. And the one that caught my eye is that in the early 2000s, he did a lot of first assistant director for the TV series Frasier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's that show's well written too, so that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's kudos.
Well, that's not him writing. That's him just being first assistant director.
Oh, okay.
He actually wrote two things. And that was the episode of Beretta and Condorman.
I got you. And this is not Sheckley. This is the guy that actually did the adaptation that was based on. Okay. I'm just looking at a paragraph here. The Game of X, the Sheckley, actually wrote the novelized version of Condorman.
Ah, did he?
Yeah, because I went looking for Game of X, and it says the Game of X loosely adapted as the 1981 Disney film Condorman. Sheckley also wrote the novelization of this film.
Oh, so he had to write the novelization of the film based on his book.
Yeah.
So he wrote Game of X first, then the movie comes out, and then he writes another version.
So one would think that they've probably done it in collaboration, yeah? But he didn't want to have a credit on the film maybe or something.
My understanding, I got a brief sort of synopsis of the Game of X?
Yeah.
The idea with the Game of X is that a civilian person has to do a little quick spy mission, but then after they do the spy mission, the person who, they get roped into doing another spy mission. That's the story of Game of X.
Yep.
That's the story. But there's no Condorman, there's no flying things.
There's no superhero stuff going on.
Superhero gadgets.
Disney.
The quick synopsis that I'm looking at says it's a spy-tangled novel of undercover misadventure that goes from Paris to Venice with semi-professional killers, as opposed to Condorman, which had dedicated killers.
Combines ironic.
Right. You have to upgrade.
This one has semi-professional ones.
Combines ironic wit with suspense to remarkable effect.
So there you go.
Feedback.
And what I think is remarkable about it is that the guy who wrote the screenplay hadn't written anything else before, and nothing after.
And the guy that did the intro,
he wrote one episode of Beretta before.
Sorry, yes, he'd done one thing before.
Yeah. So it's like Disney brought a bunch of rookies in for this one. Because I got a feeling Michael Crawford hadn't been in a major film since, what was it? Hello, Dolly, which would have been probably 20 years earlier, 15 years earlier, and he was almost a kid. He would have only been 20 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rickers. Go for it.
Yep, no, that's great. I'm glad you guys are filling in there because I'm up to my ears in marking and surviving the pandemic with a 3-year-old. So I haven't done my normal due diligence. So you're filling in nicely. The audience won't know.
Well, they will now,
Nobody would
but I'll
ever
edit this out. And
No, that's
cut.
all right. You keep
Don't
it in
worry.
there.
This is edited out. Yeah.
Nothing if not honest on this show.
Nice.
Anyway, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Like you said, obviously maybe his passion wasn't with writing, or people kind of went, "Yep,
His
next."
skill wasn't with writing.
Yeah, possibly. Now, Robert Sheckley, on the other hand, and this has happened, I think, with just about every movie we've seen so far this year, there's always a established novelist somewhere there in the mix. Mm-hmm. Even in the last film, we had Jules Verne.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in the other ones, we had, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was actually quite a Hugo Award-winning writer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Robert Sheckley is no different. In fact, he has been nominated for Hugo and Nebula Awards. Mm-hmm. And actually, he only passed away comparatively recently in 2005. So he had quite a long career. He was an American writer. And just like all the other writers so far that we've come across, he was first published in science fiction magazines in the 1950s. So he paid his dues writing short stories.
He might have known who's the Scientology guy? Wasn't he Hubbard? L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
There's so many of them cut their teeth around that time in those science fiction, tabloid type science fiction short
pulps,
story pulps. Yeah.
And I've got here a nice quote. His numerous quick-witted stories and novels were famously unpredictable, absurdist, and broadly comical.
Yeah, nice. That's a good. I think that's a pretty cool formula. Unpredictable. Absurd and comical.
Yeah. And I can see, like I said, I haven't read The Game of X, but I can imagine that he probably did have a, slapstick, bumbling civilian who was a bit over keen. So I can see if imagining or speculating if that's his style, that his story would have been a little bit out there, a little bit funny. And I guess would have lent itself quite nicely to becoming Condorman.
Makes you wonder that if instead of an American production company and a UK-based production company had gone along the same pathway that the pre-production for this film was, and instead of the CIA, it was MI5, then obviously Michael Crawford is the right person for the role. Yeah. He's the perfect pommy actor to be slapstick, physical, out there, all that sort of stuff. Perfect for the role. But for some reason they shoehorned it into an American. It's almost like they potentially might have developed it for that pathway and then deviated at some point and turned it into a CIA sort of American thing, probably because Disney were the ones that had all the money. I've often wondered, because his accent is problematic in this film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Problematic, you mean terrible.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's so American, isn't it?
I mean, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking through the whole movie, why are they just making him a pom?
Yes.
And then they can just say...
He's an artist. He could have been a pom.
He's living in America and he's... I don't know.
Different time, isn't it?
Comic book artists, I think, had to be Americans.
Yeah.
Because that's where the big comics
American. You had to be American. Everything. It was not just about having the victory. You had to have the American victory. You had to...
And also, would they want a foreigner to be the hero in an American tale? Because technically it's an American story. And then you have a foreigner being a hero, which is just not right.
Yeah.
And I actually wondered about the casting myself. I wondered because I actually asked on Facebook, an American friend of mine, about some mothers do have them, and they have no idea. It wasn't an American thing. Didn't make it over there. It's
they would have recognised him from Hello Dolly. That's all. That's all they would have known him from was Hello Dolly.
That's a very UK Australian thing, because obviously we get a lot of the UK shows here. So I suspect maybe they cast him because he did the slapstick bumbling character, but they didn't have to worry about casting against type with him because the Americans didn't know him.
Yep.
And I wonder if that was their thinking behind it.
And they may have pivoted away from a UK-based. This guy's very James Bond, isn't he? Because it's gadgets. Yeah. It's very gadget sort of related. Probably, if you were to compare him to a superhero, it'd be Batman, wouldn't he? He has no superpowers. It's just really gadgets that give him his power.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of like Maxwell Smart, actually.
Yeah, that's
Maxwell
right.
Get Smart would have been going, I don't know, would have only finished up a few years before they started that movie, right?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of Get Smart, James Bond, Pink Panther influence there.
Absolutely. Those two henchmen, the bad guys that capture Natalia and Woody in Yugoslavia, but when Woody goes at it with the cane, they're so chaos as far as agents. They're so Maxwell Smart chaos agents, aren't they? They've got that typical, there's an accent that chaos agents used to have.
Yeah, and, the sort of broad Eastern European.
Yeah. It's like this sort of loose, it doesn't fit in any country, but it sounds right for the... And also, what's the name of the guy with the chrome eye? Morovich. Yeah, don't listen
He's very much like Jaws from James Bond villain, the inhuman, and you have the car going into water. Don't forget, this is only a few years after Spy Who Loved Me, where a car does that. So there's a whole bunch of, I don't know, what's the name? Homages.
Across it's dappled all the way through it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it Disney trying to be safe, you think?
Or was it originally in the Game of X?
Yeah. Maybe it's maybe
possible.
the original writer was influenced by all of these flavors and then the movie was influenced by the original writer.
So who knows, without having read it. Anyway, Robert Sheckley, he actually got ill in the Ukraine just before he passed away, and he was famous enough that there was a bit of a campaign to raise money to send him back home for treatment, and which I thought was kind of... I mean, he survived apparently for a little while. Also, it doesn't say much about American health insurance, does it? No. A quite well-known writer has to have a fund me campaign to get back to the States, but we won't even go there, particularly at the moment. Robert has done some interesting films. In fact, according to good old IMDb, he's got a film coming out sometime, it's been announced, called Mind Swap.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So, posthumously.
Okay.
He wrote a whole bunch of films, including, interestingly enough, a whole bunch of films in Italy and Hungary. He's in a Hungarian film. Looks like some from my, I can't read Hungarian, but it looks like some sort of almost Street Fighter-y, hero-y thing, and he actually plays himself.
Oh, okay. That's worth trying to track down.
Yeah, well, don't ask me what the name of the film
Dappled
is.
in front of the camera?
Because I can't read or pronounce Hungarian. But anyway, he's also done Free Jack, which is actually a film we should actually get on here. It's a 1992 film. It's got Emilio Estevez and Anthony Hopkins.
It's not Free Jack. It's not Free Jack City. Is it Free Jack?
Yeah, Free Jack.
I've heard that name before. Let's have a look at that. Keep going.
It's kind of an early attempt at a cyberpunk type film.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. Let's have a look.
Yeah, and I think it's even got Mick Jagger in it.
That's what I remember about it. Yes, Mick Jagger is in it.
Yeah, it's kind of a 1992 cyberpunk film.
Bounty hunters from the future transport a doomed race car driver to New York City in 2009, where his mind will be replaced with that of a dead billionaire. Okay.
No, we had to do that film.
Well, just the very fact that the future is 2009 and we'll be able to compare it to the one that we experienced.
And that's actually based on a book, on a novel he wrote called Immortality, Inc.
Okay.
Which I actually heard about. Someone was telling me. It's one of those, sort of drunken conversations you have when you're only paying half attention, and only weeks later you realise there was actually something worth remembering about it. They were trying to. I think it was this novel that Free Jack is based on. Apparently inspired. What's his name? Oh, I can't believe I can't remember his name. Richard Morgan, I think. Anyway, the writer who wrote Altered Carbon.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Anyway, about putting your mind into other bodies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he also wrote, he wrote a whole bunch of science fiction scripts for TV series, Tales of Tomorrow, Armchair Theatre. He did Escape from Hell Island, The 10th Victim. He did a whole bunch of weird and wonderful science fiction TV shows and films. I don't think any of them really ever became big.
I think it's safe to say that he probably heavily influenced the genre, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, if you look at some of the titles that he's done, and they're so similar or either whether he came before or came after or whatever, it's safe to say that Robert Sheckley had a pretty heavy influence over the science fiction genre.
Yeah, definitely. Considering his first TV series that he wrote for was in 1949, and check out the name, and I'm pretty impressed, but this is 1949, right? Captain Video and his Video Rangers.
Oh, wow. That's pretty impressive.
1949.
Well, Tom, you're the intelligent one out of all of us. We're just where was video in the timeline of technology on the planet in 1949?
Oh, yeah. Well, television. Well, I know television didn't hit us until 1956 in Australia, and
video as a magnetic medium.
What would he even meant by video back then in 1949?
No, video.
Did it actually mean videos we know it, or was it just?
Is it an
was
acronym? Is video an acronym for something?
No, it's just video IC, which is Latin.
Something.
No, it means it's Latin for IC.
See, this is what I mean. Tom's way smarter than most of us. No?
Tape, when is videotape invented?
I think you're onto something there, Rick. I think that title almost predates what I would know as video as a medium.
Yeah.
I don't know. So therefore, maybe he influenced the very name video.
Yeah, it's pretty
1951.
amazing.
Yeah, it wasn't developed until the 1950s.
It says here that September 1981, he was named Author Emeritus by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America in 2001. What's that as a title? Have you heard of that before? As a writer, Author Emeritus? Is that some sort of award that they give away?
Yeah, it's kind of like my understanding is kind of like a Hall of Fame.
That's impressive.
You will always be. Because emeritus professor is someone who's so accomplished they basically, even though they're retired, they allow them to go back. But he at that stage wouldn't have been retired at all. So I think my understanding of it, and I've heard it before, I think it's just kind of like a Hall of Fame. He's now like one of the permanent gods of the thing.
Yep.
So he's quite an established guy. Despite the fact that his films, there's no Star Wars in there. There's nothing humongous, but he's been at it. He's been at all the things that influenced the big stuff, if that makes sense. So there you go. And I did mention, that's right, that he was a Hugo Award-winning character. In reading his bio quickly, I think he went through 4 marriages, lived all over the world. probably trying to get away from his ex-wives, I suspect. And like I said, he's did films all over Europe. So well done, Robert
Sheckley. It would make for an interesting film, I think, if somebody created a biopic of this guy's life. It would be pretty interesting, just because of the period that he was at his prime is such an interesting period in time.
Yeah,
for sci-fi.
There is a website dedicated to him. There is an official Robert Sheckley website.
Oh, cool.
Mind you, it looks like it was made in 2001.
The website?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. RobertSheckley.com or Sheckley.com.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But there's some interviews with him that had I been more prepared, I would have actually watched some of the interviews and seen what he had to say.
We should throw some of these links into the show notes on YouTube and for the podcast.
That's a bonza.
Yeah, we'll put them on the website. I'll definitely put them on the website on voyageofthegeek.com, where we house our audio versions of the podcast and links to the YouTube video. But definitely I'll put some links in there, because it looks like there's a heap of videos on that site, YouTube hosted videos that we can put links to.
Yeah. And yeah, he wrote a whole bunch of novels. Some of them some very interesting names. One he wrote with Harry Harrison in 1990, called Bill, the Galactic Hero on the Planet of Bottled Brains.
That's awesome.
The Alchemical Marriage of Alistair Crompton. I'm just picking out some of the interesting names. Journey Beyond Tomorrow.
Oh, Journey Beyond Anything is awesome.
Yeah. Dimension of Miracles.
Journey Beyond Time.
The
world.
Where's the other one I saw that looked really cool?
Some of his names are awesome. So some of his names of his books are pretty cool. Pilgrimage to Earth.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, there's credits on Wikipedia that aren't in IMDb, which I find a little weird. Like he's Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Laotian Gamble. That must be because it's a novel. It's not a show. It's actually
it's not a screenplay or something.
Yeah, it's actually a novel of the show. You know how all the shows have their own. Because Beck used to buy all the Star Trek Next Generation novels, and many of them were novels that had nothing to do with the show. Like that never happened in the show.
Yep,
it's just their own thing. So he's written a few Babylon 5.
Star Wars is similar. There's a lot of novelization where it's completely separate. It's supposed to be in the same lore though, but extended.
Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5.
So hang on, he's writing books.
Yeah,
Well, he's pretty prolific.
IPs. Yeah,
I'm just looking. I was just intrigued by Captain Video and his video ranges.
Yeah, what do you got?
That started in 1949, and he must have been 25 when he got that gig.
Yeah.
So that was his first
gig.
That was his first like TV writing gig. So he's like 25 years old and he's writing stories for this. Incidentally, that Captain Video and his video ranges, it says here, they estimate there was a total of 1,500 episodes.
Holy crap.
Like a Doctor Who level.
1,537 episodes.
Are they 10 minutes long?
I don't know how long they are. No,
wow.
I don't know.
Captain Kangaroo has that many.
That is crazy.
Good for you.
That's like 30-minute, a separate 30-minute. Yeah. Well, anyway.
That's bizarre.
That's pretty big, right?
That amounts to a lot of viewing time. Yeah.
That must have been a lot of people who were like right into that, and they were like, Anyway,
that's pretty impressive.
Well, that probably set him up for life. He probably spent most of his life quite comfortable, because even by that time, writers were recognised as a very important part of the process and were rewarded accordingly. If there's one, and Rick, you'll attest to this, if there's one vocation that rewards well in entertainment, whether it's music or film or television, It's the writing, because copyright, you know how copyright works on multiple layers. Music's a great way to understand it, where Taylor Swift goes into a studio and she records a top 10 hit. Well, copyright exists for the producer, the guy behind the actual desk that twiddles the knobs, the production company, the writer, the performer, so Taylor Swift, the musicians that are in the band that play the music on the record. Everybody gets copyright of that recording, right? The person,
not the writers.
No, in that instance,
but not
Taylor
first, not
Swift, if she doesn't write the film, if she doesn't write the music, she's the person out of all of those people that gets paid the least.
Yeah.
The writer is the one that actually gets paid forever. Every time that song gets covered, they're supposed to get money.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way.
Well, that sucks.
Yes. You can create a whole bunch of things, but if the IP is owned by someone else, a company...
Well, that's the contract between the writer and the intellectual property owner, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's the normal state of things. Like, I've created Star Wars characters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah. If you look up Boomer in Wikipedia, and I think I've talked about it before, I created a clone trooper Boomer, and your serial number, because you can't put your signature on anything. Star Wars, anything you create for Star Wars belongs to Star Wars.
Yep.
So the only way I could put my name to Boomer was to make his serial number my birthday. Because I discovered all troopers from the 501st Legion, their serial numbers all start with 2.
Nice.
My birthday starts with 2, and I thought
2207.
Yep, 2207.
I love that shit. I love it.
I expect to get a phone call from George Lucas's or Disney's lawyers now.
Yeah.
But yes,
not at all. I think that's safe. You got away with that, I think.
But and I created a few other smaller characters, Sergeant Kano and Rookie and Switch.
Yep.
Now,
but I think that ultimately that comes down to you signed a contract with Disney, yeah, with whoever, Lucas or Disney, and in that contract it said that you literally sign over.
And that's the normal.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it is now, but it wasn't. It sort of changed drastically through the 90s. But before that, if you wrote something,
Wolfman, who created a whole bunch of characters in the Teen Titans, Blade, characters from the House of Mystery.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't get any money for those. Marvel or DC owns them.
That's bad contract negotiation. Because there are some really fat, rich writers in Hollywood, mate, that literally live off the royalty checks of something they wrote 48 years ago.
But that's the exception to the rule. When you write...
Oh, really?
When you're writing an IP, when you're writing for an existing IP...
Oh, okay.
You can create something for that IP, but you'll never get money for it.
I got you. Yeah. That's because they got bigger lawyers.
Yeah, so you can create a brand new character, a brand new whatever, that's part of an existing IP.
Mm-hmm.
You don't own it.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
You got paid to create that by that company.
Yep.
You've already been paid. So who knows? If you create the IP and it's not owned by anyone, then you're laughing.
Mm-hmm.
But unless that's the case, so writers, it's actually a pretty hard gig. You end up creating the stuff that everyone watches and loves and buys the lunch boxes and the t-shirts and the figures and gets made 20 million films, and you won't get a cent of it.
Or 1,000 episodes, like our mate Sheckley, because it was original work. He might have owned quite a big chunk of that success. Huh?
Maybe, or the TV station that
commissioned him.
That
he may have been commissioned. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, for the writers, it sucks. So, to all my writers, brethren out there, this one's for you. Anyway, now that I've just discouraged thousands of people going, well, that's it, I'm not being a fucking writer now. Just create your own IP. Anyway, now you've discombobulated me completely.
I tend to do
Where we
that to
talk
you,
about-
Rick. I think it's.
Well, have we
something I
talked
look
about the
forward to.
Condorman comics?
Yeah. There was a comic that it got made into a comic that Marvel put out. Marvel, pretty much during the 80s and 90s, maybe even the 70s, they were like super duper proactive that there's a film coming out, we got the rights to make a comic for it. They were very good at that. That was a thing that they did. And it didn't matter who else might be connected to it. Marvel were just super at snapping that stuff up. So you'll find a lot of the movie adaptations in the 80s and 90s, surprisingly, Marvel.
Oh, really?
And Condorman is a great example of this.
There's
Did a
talk
comic-
about it these days that because Disney now owns both Condorman and Marvel, there are those voices out there that say that they should be added into the MCU.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
There's also talk about a remake, which would
I was
maybe
about
be a
to
good
ask,
idea.
could we see a modern day? Would this character work in the modern day without the KGB? Could we see a 2021 Condorman?
I'm thinking of the Shazam film. You know, we got that kid that's now a grown-up superhero, and he's a bit of a schmuck.
I think if someone's going to pull it off, it'd be Marvel. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they could probably pull it off. I don't know who the villains. There'll probably be some Arch, a Spectre.
Yeah.
I suspect.
Yeah.
I
Some
don't
secret society.
Yeah, I think they'll avoid, too many baddies, or at most it'll be some, disfranchised rogue ex-KGB, who are no longer part of Russia, that sort of thing.
Yep.
They probably can't take it too seriously like the Shazam. They'd have to do a bit of a tongue-in-cheek version of it.
It'd be
exactly.
it'd be a good comedy, wouldn't it? If you really, because this film wasn't a comedy, it was really supposed to take itself quite seriously. Am I right in thinking that?
Was it?
No, I think it was a spoof.
Really?
Yeah, it was a spoof.
You think it was a spoof?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they took
I
it
agree.
seriously. I think they tried to do a genuine superhero film.
No,
There's two
The plot
comics.
is all about a clumsy
Sorry, Dave.
character, right? The plot is all about a clumsy character, but realistically, it's set against Porsches chasing people through the mountains. But there is explosions and people die in this film.
I would
it's
put
not
it in
a
the same
comedy.
category as the Pink Panther movies, which are designed to be spoofs of, I think, mysteries and detective films.
Yeah, now that you say the Pink Panther, I think there is some similarities there. It's not as far as the Pink Panther, but you're right. There is some
And
deliberate.
there's the Henry Mancini connection.
Yeah, there is.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it about the writers. As far as the writing's concerned, I don't know if what's his name, Sturdivant, wrote at different periods and forgot what he'd written before, or it was the way that it was directed. But there's a thing where you've got Harry, who's the CIA operative, with his crazy, eccentric, clumsy cartoonist friend, who makes a fool of himself, turns up dressed up like Boris from Bullwinkle at the train station, and you kind of said, okay, there's a serious CIA agent and there's his crazy friend, and then halfway through the film, Harry becomes the bungling, clumsy, funny idiot.
Yes.
And
Woody's the straight.
And Woody's the serious, straight, hardcore. And I'm like,
That's right.
wait a minute, what happened there?
That's right. Harry doesn't like heights. He has to cuddle Woody on the cable car thing.
And it's no longer Harry telling the civilian idiot who doesn't know anything what to do. It's Woody now telling Harry exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to go down, making all the decisions, initiating everything. And from a writing point of view, that's shite.
So
like you've got
just
a complete
elaborate on that a bit.
character
I've often wondered, like when you do your the Lost Sofa looks at a film, you're sitting there watching this film. What are the main things that you would do different to this plot? What are the standout when you're looking at this as a writer and you say, that's probably a turn I wouldn't have taken? What are some of the main ones?
Well, one is that the character swap.
Okay.
That has to be consistent. I know characters have an arc and they develop and evolve, part of the hero's journey. And that would possibly be that swap I would do right at the end to show Woody's learned.
Yep.
But I wouldn't make Harry a bungling idiot because he hasn't been lobotomized. If we saw him get lobotomized during the film, okay.
Yeah.
I would probably have Harry make a bad decision or be in trouble.
Yeah.
And Woody has to step up to save his friends. That would have been a good arc. He has to step up to save Natalia and his friend.
Yeah. But the smart guy can't become the dumbass at the click of a finger like that. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
And I don't think he should ever become the dumbass. He might need saving, which would be good, which would force Woody to put on the big boy pants and, and maybe realise that he can be Condorman even without all the gadgets. That would be a lovely arc. I would have done something like that. Tried not to have so many, especially it's a film, it's a spoof, but there's a lot of, I wouldn't even call it hand waving, just plot holes that you could put entire galaxies through. Like, they make stuff in a few days.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't labor on it, but I would kind of talk about, okay, that's going to take a while. Something about, we'll have people work around the clock, but, it's not going to happen overnight. Something to acknowledge that this is going to take time. Just a few little throwaway lines like that, just to kind of hand wave some of those weird things.
I think the plot as a whole was just too complicated. They should have had something simple like, Natalia's stolen a diamond and they have to get it back to the crown jewels in the Tower of London for the Queen. Right? She's got the diamond in her pocket and they just have to run across Europe with the diamond and put it in the Tower of London. Job done.
Yeah.
Everybody could follow that. It's very simple. Kids understand. And
I mean, even the fact that
chases.
That she's a baddie. I think it would have been okay. She's a baddie. He meets the baddie.
She wants to defect.
Turns out the baddie gets mistreated by people even badder than her.
Yep.
So we have a bit of sympathy for her.
Yep.
She only trusts him, and that's fine that she thinks he's this brave agent, but he's actually an idiot.
And that's the point where it's nice and smooth, and then it gets complex after that.
And then it gets complex because then it sets up a sitcom situation where the defecting person, and especially you have to put stakes. The film never had stakes. She must know some amazing stuff about the Soviet Union, and by defecting, she'll be helping the USA. So, there's high stakes in it.
Yep.
And so he can't allow, he has to hide the fact he's a bumbling idiot. And his friend has to hide the fact he's a bumbling idiot, or it'll all go wrong. Plus the fact they're actually being chased. Put some high stakes. He has to hide the fact he's an amateur and not for real. And he does, and then typical rom-com, he gets caught out, has to redeem himself, has to put on the big boy pants, rescue his friend and her, and he succeeds, and they go back to the US and eat hot dogs and stuff. End of story,
There wasn't a lot of tension in it either. Didn't ramp up the tension.
There was never anything at stake. Like there's going to be something at stake.
It would have been like, you can imagine if they had like a ticking time bomb somewhere in the movie and they had to do something to stop it,
Yeah. Like she needs to tell the Americans about some missile code or something, before the KGB or something unleash this thing. Stuff like that. There had to be some stakes. There was nothing at stake, really. So, all the kind of the important big cogs that are required for a story like this, they just weren't there.
Yeah. Well, when we watch a film, Rik, as like visual effects artists, when we watch a film, certain films inspire us, others frustrate us, right? As a writer, when you watch a film like this, just as we wrap up, right? As a writer, when you watch a film like this, do you have to put that to the side to be able to sort of enjoy it? Do you have to sort of remove that?
Yeah. I just
because we tend to have to do that as well. I know that, and it's not often easy. When you look at some stuff and go, oh, come on, spend a couple of extra dollars and you would have had exactly what you needed there. So from a writing perspective, is it easy to do that? To sort of, because you understand plot, you understand character development, story arc, that sort of thing. It must be difficult sometimes to maybe step out.
It is, and I always joke that it's probably with people when we talk about this, I could probably do it easier if I was a really rich, famous, successful writer, because I could just go, oh well, my films are better. Yeah. But when you're just a schlep, it's like the money and resources, you guys pissed up against the wall.
It just frustrates you all the more.
Yeah. It's just like, what the fuck? Yeah. If someone gave me half that budget, what I could do with it.
Oh well, that's identical to visual effects and animation. Yeah. That's exactly how we feel. All right, awesome. So, and are you happy to sign off for another awesome episode of The Lost Sofa for the week?
Yes, I'm starting to get sad now about Condorman, so it's probably time.
Awesome. And another awesome episode of The Lost Sofa for Rik Legarto.
There is something going down, and I can feel it.
At last, welcome to you. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
I can feel it. There is something going down, and I can feel it.
I never get tired of the outro music, the intro music for Tom's, for Rik's session.
And that was a la Dan, wasn't it?
It was. It's a bit of dance magic, inspired by the Bee Gees there. The falsetto nature of the Lost Sofa. So let's jump straight into our next section with Tom Magill, who loves to really get behind the scenes and expose just the tip.
So this is the trivia section, where I try to find out information about the characters, or behind the scene, behind the actors, or about the special effects, anything that's sort of interesting. This film was made in the early 80s, just after we had successes with Superman for special effects, for example. So we're comparing it to other films in that timeline, and special effects aren't that good, I think, compared to these. So not much to mention there. We have a condor guy on a crane. We have some blue screen stuff. As Dave mentioned in part one, the flames coming out of the mouth. Are you saying
that he didn't fly for real?
If he could have sailed and could have just spread out his wings and glided, it might have been a bit more believable.
Just destroyer of dreams.
I'm pretty sure you can see the wire as well.
Yeah.
My 8-year-old this morning saw the wire. And she'd never seen. My 8-year-old has grown up in a world of Marvel movies and Iron Man and all the rest of it. She looked at this thing and this morning she said, "What the hell is going on there?" She couldn't understand what she was looking at. She literally just saw a guy dangling from a wire.
There are a few interesting bits of the making of the film. For example, that the main actor almost drowned in the shot where they drop him into the Seine. He jumps off the Eiffel Tower and he falls into the water, and he was sort of stuck under those wings, and they just pulled him out, and a rescue swimmer had to come in and pull him out, and he wanted to do the take again. Because he was famous for always doing his own stunts. So the British show, some others do have him, which I was not aware of until I looked up Woody Woodman.
Have you seen an episode yet?
I've seen 2 episodes by now.
It's pretty full on. Some of the stuff he got up to as a physical actor.
I think I want to see more shows because of that, because of the slapstick, because of the stunts.
It's crazy. Like he would literally he would go through a fake brick wall at 60 kilometers an hour on the top of a car and stuff like that. And it was the real guy.
Yeah.
I've
Or
seen him
he's
going
wearing
down
roller skates.
down the stairs onto a driving bus.
Yeah.
Holds on to the driving bus with the roller skates. So amazing stuff. And probably one of the reasons that Michael Crawford was considered for the role, because he has to, he what was the sentence? He flies, he death defies.
Yeah.
He spies, he flies, he death defies. They had to have somebody who just was unkillable. He can't be shot down from a jet ski in the Alps, fall 300 meters down into the snow, and just like Wile E. Coyote, make a little pattern in the snow of his body, and then get up again. So he cannot be killed. That's his superpower. That is his superpower. He's unkillable.
But
Anyway, they didn't let him. They didn't let the actor They didn't let Michael Crawford do the stunt again. And what you see in the film, then the one that actually made it into the movie was a stunt double.
With the fall, you mean for the fall?
With the fall into the Seine.
So after that,
I put it to you that the shot that we saw in the film might have been a dummy. Like that cartwheeling. There was a very stiff starfish-looking thing falling out of the sky for that snow angel thing.
That was a puppet. That was a horrible, horrible puppet. Okay. Now I'm talking about the condor wings when he's flying off the Eiffel Tower and face plants into the river.
That takes a bit of the magic away from me.
So they basically said, hey, look, let's get Michael Crawford. He's really good at physical comedy. He can do his own stunts.
And he did it, nearly drowned, and then they got another guy.
They said that, then they got another guy.
Yeah. Well, they put a trained stuntman in his place, and they filmed it. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know which take ended up in the film. That might be Michael Crawford there. But I think they refilmed it with a stunt double. So, I know they refilmed it with a stunt double, and I would assume that that's what they put in the film. And the other thing that was nice to find on the trivia pages was what Dave alluded to earlier, when they're in the Alps and after they have unceremoniously dispatched Woody and Harry, Natalia gets taken into the helicopter, and Oliver Reed, who is a notoriously difficult actor to play with. He will, throw tantrums on stage and do what he wants, and plays, as we said, plays probably just himself. He figured that Barbara Carrera's reaction or sadness or fear wasn't played out strongly enough in the helicopter. So he opened the door and sort of pushed her out by the head. You can see her grab the head and push her. Yeah. He's being pretty brutal with her in that shot. Yeah. And she got upset and elbows him in the chest, film. And that was all. That's in the film, and that's all real. Yeah. Oh wow! Similar to what we had when we reviewed the Journey to the Center of the Earth, when the woman is on the raft.
That's right.
And the actress shows genuine fear because she's afraid that she might fall off the thing. Yeah. Yeah. So Oliver Reed also had one segment where he took his tuxedo and had some disgruntled grievances with the staff, and he took his tuxedo and threw it into the ocean.
That's right. Threw it into the bay.
Morning, the next morning, one of the costume people had to row out in a little boat and fish it out again, because they figured it would be cheaper to just clean that suit and give it back to him. But the thing that really I found flabbergasting and sort of interesting in this particular film is the timeline. They're always in a rush. They need to defect. She wants to get the papers.
Well, the bad guys
that's happening in 2 days. But even the defection, they want that immediately done. Yet they have to come up with all the different tools that Woody wants to have. So I've thought about a timeline.
Yeah, and we're going to splice this in too. So as you discuss this, we'll splice it in so people at home can sort of follow it. Go ahead.
Sort of follow along what I want to do. But essentially, we're starting on day one where he falls into the Seine, and Harry recruits him. That all happens on the same day, because the boss, Diana Ross. He is away for 2 days, right? So he says, I have to be away. I'm coming back in 2 days. Right. You look after the Istanbul thing. And Harry says, "Oh well, the Istanbul thing happens day after tomorrow," which also means 2 days, right?
Yep.
So on day one, on day three, essentially 2 days later, they have to be in Istanbul. Now, Woody, I looked up the train from Paris to Istanbul. Takes 2 days.
Because I would have.
It takes 2 days to get from Paris to Istanbul by train.
Yep.
So essentially, the time when he's sitting on in Paris at the railroad station in the trench coat with the hat and the sunglasses, that's the evening of
when
that same day.
when he goes in the river.
The river.
Yeah.
It's the same day. Harry calls him and says, "You got to go." And Woody goes, "Sure." Grabs some trench coat, gets into a taxi immediately.
Yep.
And spends 2 days on going to Istanbul.
Yep.
On a train. Does the thing. And after the thing happens, Natalia, the next shot is she arrives back in Moscow, and that also takes 2 days. So
while he's traveling back from Istanbul,
while he's traveling back,
2 days, yep.
So she's back in Moscow, and there we have the next timeline hint where Krakow talks about the upcoming meeting of the oil ministers in Monte Carlo. So that's coming up. So the thing that we see at the very, very, very end of the film is already in game. And it's not far away because he says, "Well, I'm angry at you and you're not going." So, it's not far away. We don't know how far away it is. And then essentially the next thing that we see is when we hear that Natalia wants to defect. Now, that could have been weeks. There could be months in between. There could have been a long time. But I don't think it is a long time because the oil minister meeting is already on the agenda, and also Woody is still painting Condorman.
Yep.
And he has finished it now. So
and he
Natalia
hasn't debuted those characters.
He hasn't
when he's
debuted those
asked to
characters.
go,
And he says Condorman and Laser Lady debuts next week.
Right.
So we have 7 days before that comic comes out.
Okay.
So on one day they want to recruit him. He says, "Yes, I'll do it, but only when I get to do the gadgets." And then the next shot we see is Diana Ross looks through all the gadgets, the drawings. Bloody Woody has drawn his entire plan on a sheet of paper. There's drawings of the gypsy wagon. There's even drawings of Natalia behind rocks, wearing the costume. There's drawings of the boats. Everything has been planned out in comic book form. And okay, he's in a rush, and there's like three or four full pages of comic book, which Woody could easily do in one evening, I guess, being experienced. So let's say it's the next day because they're on a rush. So on day 2 of this new segment, Woody has sketched everything. Russ Devlin approves it and says, "Get fabrication onto it. I want you there yesterday."
Yeah, that's right.
They're in a really, really, really mad rush. And the next shot is Yugoslavia. So somewhere in that immense rush that they were in, so what they did in that time, they had to create, fabrication essentially, had to create one redneck cane that shoots machine guns.
And a lot of bullets.
800 bullets.
Yeah.
With an invisible magazine.
Pop-out car.
That's it.
3 jet rods that go up the Alps, and a Sterling Nova with a ramp, laser guns, flamethrower, and it can convert into a boat, and has all these tiny little buttons and everything in there.
Yeah. And in that amount of time, they might have done the gypsy van. That's probably it. They might have been able to get that. But instead, they got all that done. Yep.
They got all that done.
Well, that's what happens when you don't have any unions. You just exploit your workers. It's America.
Yeah. At least the Sterling Nova had a pop-up roof, so they didn't have to convert that. So in order to get from the van into the car, they go just elevator down. That Sterling Nova had the capacity that the roof would just pop up in order to get into the car anyway. So there's one modification they didn't need to do. So we're now in Yugoslavia, and we don't know how much time has passed now to get us to Yugoslavia. All we know is that they wanted them there yesterday. So in that one day in Yugoslavia, they free the girl, they have the car chase, they speed up with the boat over the ocean, and they arrive in Italy in the evening and go to bed in Italy. So we have that day. Now the next day, they get arrested by the police. They get rescued by Harry. They end up at some point at the Italian-Swiss border where all the kids have the comic book. So there's the hint, because comic book was going to debut in a week's time. So at the very, very least, now between Yugoslavia and Italy, and recruiting and getting getting fabrication to build the things, at the very least, there would have been, 5-6 days in between.
Yeah.
So at least we're now on day 7 or something, 7 or more. Because there's no way in hell that a comic store in Italy has the comic on the same day that it debuts in America.
Let alone some
It's
village
usually-
up in the mountains.
Like I was traveling in Greece in 1992, and the comics that I bought there just for fun, because I was a big X-Men fan at the time, reading lots of the X-Men comics. I was buying the X-Men comics in Greece for shits and giggles that were then coming into the store. And they were from 1979. Now they're 1992. So we had translated them, and they were 20
Mail
years
takes
behind.
a long time.
They were 13 years behind the thing. Anyway, so if we say Italy, Northern Italy really loves American comics, and all the kids rush to it, let's say at the very, very least, we're now 7 days into the story. But that's still insane. That means fabrication would have had 3, 4, 5, 6. They would have had 4 days to build the cane, the gypsy van, the wreck, everything.
Yep.
And they've got to transport it from wherever
And
they
they got
made
to
it.
transport it.
That's
from-
right.
Couldn't they have taken longer? What stops them from taking longer in
Yes.
your time?
The only thing that stops me from taking longer is
How
the
long it
oil
took
ministers
her to-
meeting in Monte Carlo.
What
Which
about
is
how
already-
long it took her to...
That could have been
Oh, no.
a month ahead.
Could be in a month. Yeah.
It could be a month or two. You know,
It must-
we know about meetings we have in about 2 months, 1 month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be a month away, it could be 2 months away. But still, we're talking about insane fabrication time there
Yes.
for a jet-powered, laser-shooting, boat-driving car. Who knows if they tested it
Well,
or
the
when they
big-
trained to use it.
The big... I don't know, like when Russ says, I want you there yesterday, that would indicate...
That's why I'm trying to keep it tight.
pretty
That's why I'm
quick-
trying to
that's a
keep
pretty
it as
quick
tight as
turnaround,
possible.
Yeah.
There's no indication in the story that this is all happening at a relaxed pace and they're chilling out in
No.
Italy for 2
No,
weeks.
they're on a
you know?
rush.
No.
They're on a rush, and the comic, just because the comic is in Italy already, that's why I'm giving them the leeway of 4 days for the fabrication, because otherwise it's too early for the comic to have come out.
Yep.
Anyway, that's the biggest problem in the story with the timeline. The rest is pretty straightforward. They they spend the night in Italy. They go to the border to Switzerland. They take their jet rods up the Matterhorn. The puppets die, and Harry says, well, because the whole show gets cancelled by the CIA, and they're supposed to go to Paris. Harry asks for 2 days. I want 2 days to save her.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Yep. That's right.
So now he has 2 days to organize. Now, what does he have to organize in those 2 days?
Well, let me
right?
put something that you might not have considered. You might have, but when he walks out of the casino at Monte Carlo, there are 17 guys in fake beards and mustaches that walk out with briefcases full of money, right? Imagine what has to happen in order for him to break the bank at the casino at Monte Carlo and have 17 extras, like CIA guys, to walk out behind him with cases full of money. Like, he legitimately
Even worse.
broke the
Before
bank.
he does that, he has to invent a backstory for
right.
his character because the bad guys look him up.
Exactly.
There's an existing backstory for him already. So he sets all that up.
Yeah, it makes you feel like
Instagram.
maybe Mickey Mouse sort of wandered into the writer's room. Said, "Oh, we
He
can do
gets
it.
the
I'm a
wings.
mouse with pants and I can sing."
He gets the
I
wings
think I was
to
smoking.
Monte Carlo.
Mickey Mouse.
He makes the background identity for the Arab persona. He gets all the explosives organized. He organizes a speedboat with laser turrets and matching uniforms and helmets.
Yep.
And the bloody helicopter, which is probably the easiest thing to get sorted out, which they don't make enough use of.
Yep. And it's the
So all of that.
it's little
And
details
you
like the
think-
matching uniforms and helmets and wetsuit,
Flooding vests.
life vests and stuff like that. That not only did they have enough time to do it, they had enough time to do it so that they're all matched, Tom.
Yeah. And if you think about it, he says, give me 2 days. It's 2 days to save Natalia, right? He saves Natalia on the second day. The casino thing is a day before that.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially he's on day 8 saying, give me 2 days. On day 9, he's dressed up as an Arab in the casino cleaning it out.
I'm starting to see problems.
And on day 10, he saves the girl and end of film.
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see some problems here in the linear nature of the script.
I thought it was interesting for this particular film to analyze that anyway, in the lack of any other trivia.
Yeah, I like that.
Remember also that the bad guys have a similar sort of timeline and bunch of stuff happening in parallel alongside, because they're shipping black speedboats from one port to another port.
Well, it's not just that, Dan. Their top 4 drivers of the Broknovich got incinerated up on a mountain 3 or 4 days earlier, and now they have to go out and find another 4 drivers for the Broknovich water division to be ready in the harbour.
Well, here's my theory.
They're the reserves.
Yeah.
Space.
Because the little sleepy village in Yugoslavia recognizes the Broknovich, whatever,
Broknovich,
by the sound of their cars when they're 3 miles away. The whole town goes silent. They hear the cars and they see that could only be the Broknovich. Yeah. So my theory is the KGB has a crack team of dedicated killers in pretty much 5-kilometer intervals all over Europe.
That's right.
They just activate that little cell.
And they're all called the Broknovich.
They're all sitting there with them. Either if they're on water, they have boats. If they're on land, they have cars. They're probably black plane ones and parachutists.
Nice.
They're probably actually, they're not all guys. They're like little old ladies and they're farmers and whatever. They just put on the helmets when they're activated.
Yeah. They're the Stig.
Then they become the Stig. They become the Stignovich.
Maybe the CIA has the same thing, and the 2 old ladies in the church that are fighting are maybe a CIA agent and a KGB agent who recognize them as each other.
They flash them the secret symbols with their hands.
Love it.
Anyway, that's my segment.
Awesome, Tom. Another fantastic episode of Just the Tip. Another great episode of Just the Tip. That's it for another episode of Voyage of the Geek, episode 2 of our deep dive into the classic 1981 hero genre film from the Walt Disney. Is it Walt Disney Studios at that time? I think it is.
Buena Vista, isn't it?
Buena Vista. We'll get to that in my segment. I've got a bit of a trick question about that. But is Walt... I think well, we'll discuss it in the next episode. But for now, that's it for another episode of Voyage of the Geek. Until next time, it's bye for me.
Bye-bye. And bye for me.
How many of you are there?